This week, we're celebrating the Queen's Jubilee. Welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at a fan-shaped arrangement, and if you're part of my private Facebook group, then you'll know that Joan has requested that I explain how to do a fan-shape arrangement. So that's the design for today. If you haven't been here before, welcome. My name is Sharon and I've got a YouTube channel full of videos and tutorials helping you to learn basic floral design. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do share it with as many friends and family as you can, so lots of people get to learn floral design. Hit the bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial, and join me if you want on my private Facebook group where we can have a chat about your floral designs and share ideas within my floral community. Now we're going to look today at quite a traditional design. You can make this in a modern format, and if you look online for fan-shaped arrangements, you'll see lots that have been done in a very modern and contemporary style. But for today, because this is the first time we've looked at the fan-shaped arrangement, I'm going to do it in a fairly traditional style. It's a classic design that I would probably say comes from the French period during the 17th and 18th century, and was probably seen a lot in British Georgian floral design as well. It's a great design to go in the hearth or, within your fireplace. It can sit beautifully on a mantelpiece or in front of a mirror, and it would look fantastic on an altar. So for the ladies that are arranging flowers in the church, this is a really good design to do. I do talk quite a lot in the videos, but I feel that if you're learning floral design, you really need to know the underpinning knowledge that goes with the designs. So if you don't like the talking, just fast forward a bit until you get to the point where I'm actually arranging flowers. But I'm going to talk through a little bit of theory first, which I think is really important. Fan-shaped design is a classical design. It's symmetrical, so it's equally balanced on both sides. And you might be wondering, what exactly is a fan-shaped arrangement? Well, I've cut out a small piece of cardboard here just to give you an illustration of probably an easier way of me explaining a fan shape. And if you think of a fan that you would use to cool yourself down in warm weather, we're trying to replicate that shape. And if you break it down and form of that design, then it's really a semicircle. So this semicircle has a center point. This will be our focal point, and it'll be where my focal flower will be. Then your materials radiate out from that center point. And examples to look at would be rays of a sun, spokes of a wheel. Look at pictures and photographs of fans and get inspiration from the shape of those particular designs. Think of the center sections that hold that fan into position, and that's the shape that we're going to try and recreate today. It's a half moon shape. If you look at the dials in your car, if you look at the speedometer in your car, that's often a fan shape. And where you have the indentations, the markings for how fast you're driving or how much petrol is in your car, then those are the markers and the indications that we're going to follow to create this fan shape. Floor butted up against the door. That will give you inspiration. And when I'm teaching here in the studio or when I'm teaching online, I always encourage you to look outside the floral world. Look at other examples of fans so you can understand the theory of how that design is put together. Getting inspiration from other sources is really quite important. Now I'm going to be using a choice of flowers that are probably materials that you would order from a florist shop, but I've tried to bear in mind flowers that are currently available in the supermarket. We're in the middle, almost towards the end of May, so I've looked at using stock, but antirrhinums would be brilliant from the garden. You might have delphiniums coming up in as well. If you've still got snapdragons or you're able to buy those from the supermarket, then they are really worth purchasing because they're really going to help you create those lines of movement that we need to create the fan. In my description of the fan shape arrangement, I suggested that we had a focal point. So you need a material that will give you a strong focal point. And then the lines of material radiate away from that center point. So in the description, I said the word line. So the best material to choose for this design is line material. So gladioli in the autumn would be perfect. Stocks, as I've mentioned, snapdragons, antirrhinums, liatris, tropical foliage, that linear shape would be ideal. Bulrushes would be fantastic. A Astelia leaves, Formium leaves are ideal. If you're new to floral design, you really need to distinguish between line material, filler or transitional material, and round shaped flowers, because they do different jobs within your floral design. Okay, enough talking, let's get on with the arrangement. Now today I'm using a flat dish. You could make this design in a bowl shaped container, but you need to have access to place your flowers and your foliage in on the side. So it's no good burying your foam in a container, and I've got an example of this. So it's no good burying your foam deep in the container, because then you won't be able to place in the side pieces of your fan shape. So if I just illustrate that with my piece of cardboard, if the cardboard is sitting on the top and that's your fan shape on the top, then if your foam is below the container, you aren't going to be able to get these side or lateral positions into the design. So that's why I've chosen to use a flat container for the first example of this design. And if it's something that you like and something that you've enjoyed, then maybe I can look at it again in a different format, so you get to see a variety of these types of designs. Now I've also chosen today a red, white and blue theme, because I know that we've got the Jubilee celebration this year in the UK, and I thought it would be a good way of introducing our national flag into the floral design. It might not be everybody's colour choice, but it's something that I thought you might be able to replicate at home, and it would look beautiful on an entranceway if you're maybe having a party. It would look fantastic fanned out at the back of a buffet table, and hopefully it will inspire you to create something at home for the Jubilee weekend. My plastic dish is just very basic square dish. It's a melamine container. I use these quite a lot in floral design, and I am using floral foam, so the ordinary basic green floral foam. And what's important with this design is that you start with a square piece of foam, so the dimensions are the same on the sides as they are across the top, because that will make your design easier to create. It'll make it easier for you to balance it on either side. Don't make the mistake of putting a whole block of floral foam into a container and then try and create that fan shape, because you have an unequal base to start with. If you start with a square base where the proportions are equal, it will make it much easier for you to create that lovely fanned out design. If you think of a wagon wheel, and hopefully I can get a photo up here to show you, go back to the cowboys and Indians, and if you think about that wagon wheel, there is a circular hub in the centre, and that's my focal point. And coming away from it are the spokes of the wheel, and that is going to be the linear line material that I'm going to use to create that overall fan shape. So I've gone and chosen myself linear materials. I don't have any measurements to work off. I don't have to make my design twice the height of my container, and I don't have a set position to put the design in, so dimensions for me are irrelevant. I'm just going to do a design that sits quite comfortably in the camera screen, and this is going to give me quite a good height. What I then will do is use the same measurement to give me my side placement. So that's my height. It's also going to be my side placement, and that's going to give me my outline shape. So what I'm initially going to do is choose myself 3 of the Delphinium. So this is the imported Delphinium. This is the Delphinium Volkenfried. And what I'm initially going to do is cut myself 3 that are fairly similar in size and shape, possibly a bit big, that one. So I'm patiently selecting 3 flowers that are fairly similar in shape. They're identical in length because I've just cut them so that they are the same length. Then these will give me that outline shape that I want to create, and it's important to get those proportions right at the very beginning. I'm 2/3 of the way back in my floral foam, and I've inserted my flower a good inch into the floral foam, and that's important to remember, because every time we insert flowers into the foam, we need to go in roughly the same length, so that that curved shape is equal on both sides. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from the side, making sure that I go roughly the same depth into the foam so that I'm creating that lovely shape there on the top. So I'm going to take my time to make sure that the placements of the flowers start to create the outline of the fan. So if we think again, you're holding your fan at the focal point, you have these radiating lines coming out from the fan, and that's the shape that I'm trying to repeat to create my outline shape. So if I turn it to the side, you'll see that I'm working at the back of the floral foam and I'm in line with my top flower so that we're creating that dome effect from the top down to the side. And at the moment, if I go back to my piece of cardboard, I've only placed my centre flower and my 2 lateral placements of material in there. So now we're going to fill in the centre to establish the fan at the back of my floral design. So I'm still using the Delphinium at the back, and again I'm going to look for 2 that are fairly similar in their size and shape, so that when we split the design in half we have visual weight that's equal on both sides. If I was to use this heavier Delphinium on one side and then this smaller Delphinium on the opposite side, visually the way you look at it is heavier on one side. So I'm trying to pick pieces that match one another. And we don't often do this in floral design, but when we're doing these very formal shapes, we have to really consider the materials that we're picking. Now, the best I can do is these 2. And it's not, you know, it's not going to be perfect. Flowers aren't grown, so they're perfectly matching and they look identical, but it's something that you need to consider in a design like this. Now, if we think about that radiating fan shape that comes up, now I'm trying to link it together here in the middle. And this is why I've cut my floral foam at an angle on the edge so that I can get this corner piece in so that it sits really nicely in between, and I'm trying to get that equally in the middle of the bottom and the top flower. So the gap in this section here and the gap here is exactly the same. Now at the moment I'm working in reverse because I'm facing the design towards you. So if it's not perfect, I apologise, but it's because I'm working in reverse. What I've tried to do is we look at it from the side. It's a very, very severe straight line. And in floral design, I don't encourage you to do this. I always tell you to bring weight to the back of the arrangement. And we will add foliage in at the end, but this design can be quite severe at the back. That's my outline shape. I'm going to spin it around so I can see it from the front. And I feel that this side needs to move slightly up. So these 2, this one and this one, should be almost a mirror image of one another, and so should these 2 on the bottom. If I cut it down the middle, it should be exactly the same on one side as it is on the other, bearing in mind that your flowers aren't perfectly the same. Right, so that's a really good outline shape. And if you had more flowers of the same variety, and when you get a bit more experience, you can mix the flowers. But when you're learning, I would stick to the same variety. So I could, if I wanted to, go in between again and add some more of these linear flowers into the design. But for a minute, I'm going to step forward and do another line of material in front of it. And this time I'm gonna lift this one up slightly because it's dragging on the table as I'm working. What I'm going to do next is use some white stocks. I couldn't think what they were called for a moment then. And I'm going to now create another version of the fan in front of the Delphinium that I've created at the back. So I now need to move forward in my floral foam. This time I'm going to go in between the gaps. So if I just turn that round for you, I'm going to go in this position, but further forward. So I'm starting to create that depth that I talk about in video. So a little bit shorter down, I've removed all of the leaves from the stock. If you didn't know, the stock is related to the cabbage family. It's all the same. And the leaves tend to have that very pungent smell. So I've made sure that I've removed the majority of the foliage off the stock so that we don't have that very pungent smell in a few days' time. Now you might have noticed I started to put this stock into the design, but after I'd chosen it, I realised that it's much smaller than the stock that I've already put in. So I've tried to find bigger white stock so that it's matching the one that I've already placed in. And what I'm doing now is bringing my lined material further forward. So I have a fan at the back, and now I'm bringing another fan in front of it, bringing your eye forward, creating depth and making your eye move down to the strong focal point that I'll be putting in towards the end. So again, I've gone in between the placements. They're not quite the same height, but we'll work with it for a moment. Now I'm going to look at putting 2 on either side here, and I've gone shorter so that we're stepping down the flowers just like we would do in traditional floral design. Okay, so I'm going to look at these 2 now. These are probably a better matching pair to use. And I often say in flower arranging lessons, if you choose the right material at the beginning, if you select the materials that works best in the floral design, then you're almost, you're 2/3 of the way there. If you try to create this design with chrysanthemum sprays or spray carnations, you're not going to get that same effect. You're going to lose those spokes of a wheel, the rays of a sun that we're trying to create. Okay, so that's the 4 stocks. And I know you're probably going to come for me and say, well, you should be using odd numbers. But in this design, the 4 work really well to create that second tier of the fan. So I'm not worrying about it too much. Now my next flower is going to be the rose, and I know this isn't a good example of line, but because I'm closer to the focal point, it's not quite so important. It's still a really good flower to use for this type of arrangement. So if you struggle with finding this type of linear material, then your next best option is probably going to be a rose. I might, as I progress through the design, intersperse the red in between the blue here at the back. But for the minute, I'm going to work my fan towards the front. You'll see if we look from the side, the design is still a little bit flat, but now I'm going to start giving myself some depth in the design by bringing my red rose a little bit further forward, but still copying that fan shape. Now I did leave the leaves on, but I have decided that I'm going to remove some of them because it's making the design look a little scruffy. So I'm going to start with one in the center, and this is underneath my delphinium there at the back. That's quite important to do. And now I'm going to radiate them out, following the pattern that I've already created there at the back. But if we look at it from the side, I'm starting to bring the colour and the flowers towards the front, so it's going to meet my focal point here at the bottom. And when you're practicing this, if you find it easier to put the focal point in first so that you can stage your flowers towards the back as you work, try it that way. But for me, I find it easier to do the shape at the back and work towards the front. Now if we think about that rose, what I can do to make it a bit easier when I'm learning is cut my roses to the same length. Remember at the beginning I discussed that if your floral foam is equal and the proportions are the same, then you're hopefully going to end up with a really good radiation of your stem types. So we've cut the 3, we'll go back in with the center flower, and initially I'm going to bring one out either side so that it accompanies that delphinium. Now what you need to be careful of now is that you don't knock the other flower stems as you're placing these ones into the foam. So now is the time to take your time a little bit. Hopefully they're equally spaced out, so the length of the flower is fairly similar. And I'm creating again the outline of that fan shape. My next point now would be to go in between with the red rose. Now I've got a bunch that originally had 10 in it. I snapped one when I was unpacking them. I probably won't have enough to bring the red colour into the back, but we'll see now how it works. So far I've got, this is the 5th rose to go in, and I've really copied the shape of the flower material at the back. We can still see an awful lot of foam, but we'll work on that towards the end. But we've got the red, the white and the blue colouring really well distributed from front to back, and now we're starting to see the depth take place We look at it from the side, that flat design. I know it's still very flat at the back, but the flat design that we saw at the very beginning is now turning into a design with more dimension to it, and it looks far more pleasing to the eye. Okay, so I've got 4 of the red roses left. So if I decided to put the 4 in, I could use them in the same place as the stalks are, but more towards the back. So let's look to see how that's going to work out. It's going to work quite well, I think, in between each section. I'm looking to try and have them as equally balanced on both sides as possible. I've done flower arranging for a very long time, so I don't need to measure my flowers. I can do it by eye. But if you feel that you want to lay your flowers out on the table beforehand in a fan-shaped pattern, so radiate them out from a centre point, then you can cut your stems so that you know exactly how long they need to be when they go into an arrangement. Bearing in mind that you need to leave them a good inch longer to insert into the floral foam. But if you're learning and it's a bit scary for you to cut your flowers, you don't want to cut them too short, lay them out on the table, and it will give you a really good indication of the shape that you're trying to create. Now, I probably in a little while remove the greenery off the rose, but what I've now done is created stronger background. So I've brought the red towards the back, and it's now interspersed in between the blue delphinium that we started with. And I often say it in videos, when you buy your flowers or when you're choosing your flowers, think beforehand how you can use them in a floral design. Don't randomly pick any bunch. Pick a yellow and a pink and a blue and not think about how you're going to do it. Plan your design before you go and buy your flowers, and it will really help you create the design that you have imagined in your head. My focal flower in this design is going to be a really lovely blue hydrangea, and you can tell that they're not really in their true season yet because they are so tiny. Beautiful, beautiful hydrangea, but very small. And a group of these in the front is really going to help me create that focal point. So I'm going to cut them fairly short. Again, we're going to go in the middle to create my focal point. So this one is underneath the delphinium and the rose. So we have that focal line down through the front. Now I'm going to add some more of the hydrangeas to it to strengthen that position in the front there. Remembering that the focal point should be more dominant than the rest of the design. It's the area that your eye rests and that your eye stops before it goes off and looks at other parts of your flower arrangement. So the focal point should be the more dominant section. And what I'm going to do is use 4 of the heads. So far I've put in 3, 2 in front of one another, or on top of one another, and then I'm going to do 2 either side. So I'm almost creating one large hydrangea with these smaller flowers that I've got hold of. If you're in the part of the world where you currently have hydrangeas in the garden, so if it's autumn or winter, wherever you are now, then you might have a really big full hydrangea to put in this design. That would be ideal to create your focal point. It could also be a group of carnations arranged really close together. It could be a big allium if you've got alliums in the garden. But what I'm aiming to do there is to try and create a round shape, which is the hub of your wheel. If you think of that wagon wheel again that I keep referring to, if you think about that hub in the middle of your wheel and the spokes that shoot off, and I'll turn that around for you to see. I probably would fiddle with it a little bit more because you can probably see the centre has almost quite a clear gap in the middle. So I'd probably push them together a bit more to avoid that section opening up in the middle. But for a moment, that's the very basic of a fan-shaped arrangement. We've got the pointed line material at the back that represents spokes of a wheel or the rays of the sun, and then we've got that round circular more dominant section at the front which gives you the hubcap of a wheel, or the centre, the holding point of your fan. Now what we don't want to do at this position is overfill the design so we lose that characteristic shape, and I often say this at the end of the arrangement. What I'm going to do with my spare leaves, so this is the foliage from the hydrangea, I'm going to use them around the hydrangea in a fan shape. So again, I'm repeating the fan shape. The hydrangea leaves are brilliant to use in this type of style. They have a lovely shape to them, so they're a rounded, almost a fan shape in themselves. And I'm going to work these all the way around so that I'm helping to cover some of the floral foam, and I'm bringing a little bit of contrast in texture and colour as well. I would probably suggest at this stage that you avoid using too many bunchy foliages up tall, because you're going to lose that shape. And all I'm going to do is keep my foliage low behind the hydrangea leaves so that I don't lose the pointed shape of the arrangement. Now we'll do that in just a second. If we look at the back, I'm lucky enough today to have the Rapis palms here, and this is a really good example of the shape that you're trying to create in this arrangement. So this is fan shaped. It has those lines coming up, radiating from a centre point, and that's what we've tried to repeat and we've tried to create in this design. So this is fantastic for me to use at the back. Now I know lots of you aren't going to be able to have a leaf like this. So you would need to choose material that is linear in its style. Conifer would be ideal if you're at home. Privet would be fantastic. Anything that is straight and doesn't have a bunchy nature to it. You might have New Zealand flax, you could have Astelia leaves in your garden. We get people that are watching from all over the world, so come back to me and tell me what you've got and what you could use in this design. What I don't want to do is lose the shape from the front. So I don't want to put these leaves in this sort of position here. Now my lines are radiating from a completely different point. So you have to keep everything contained within the outline shape that you've already created. If we look at it from the side, if I show you this position here, I'm not sure if the camera will pick up this area here, but there's quite a lot of floral foam showing. So to cover that, I'm going to use my material down low, and it is bunchy foliage, but I'm not going to bring it up high. So for filling in, I've got the pistache foliage that you see me use quite often, and I explain it in lots of videos. As a florist, a commercial florist, this is a fairly inexpensive foliage that I always have here in the studio, because it means that I can make a hand tie really well with it. I can fill in arrangements. We use it a lot in bridal designs, archways, because it's a compact leaf and covers a big space very quickly. What I'm not going to do with it is use it in the design in this fashion here, so that it brings in a heaviness to the arrangement. I'm going to cut it really short, so you'll see in just a second. I'm going to cut it short, and I'm going to tuck it in quite low so that it gives me some coverage of my floral foam, but without spoiling that shape that we've spent a long time creating. And there's nothing worse in floral design when you spend a long time making an arrangement and you've got a beautiful shape, you can see all your flowers and you can appreciate all the different colours and textures, and then you go and cover it in foliage or gypsophilia, a filler flower of some description, and you hide the overall shape of the design that you've spent a long time trying to create. Let's keep going. Low down foliage, tucked in underneath so it helps cover my foam but doesn't protrude too far up into my design itself. As I fill it in with my greenery, this is a good time to remind you to write a comment in the box below. Let me know what you like or what you dislike about the videos. Do I talk too much? Do I give you too much theory and too much information? Or do you enjoy the information that I give you relating to the theory? I've got a list at the moment of designs that were currently created, and they've been suggested to me either in the comment box below or in my private Facebook group. And don't forget, if you want to join that private group, then find me on Facebook. The group is called Sharon's Innovations Group. We're also looking at putting together an online 10-week course. So if you're interested in that, pop it in the comment box below and I'll respond with some information as soon as that's all put together. But for now, that's my attempt at a very basic fan-shaped arrangement. I hope you've enjoyed that one. If you have any feedback or comments, then please add them in the box below. Let me know if you attempt a design like this and what flowers you're going to use. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.